ඔෆිස් එකේදී විතරක් නෙවෙයි මම දැන් ගෙදරදීත් IDD calls ගන්න SLT phone එකේ.
ඔබේ නිවසේ SLT දුරකථනය දැන් IDD පහසුකම සහිතයි.
Good evening. Tonight, against an increase, fishermen protest fuel price hike while government says a subsidy will be on the way. Momentum for 2020. Key parties talk about their candidate vying for the top job in 2 years. Final decision pending. Persian relations. President meets Supreme Leader of Iran. Sri Lanka, Iran inks 5 new economic and trade MOUs. Jobs promise. Prime Minister says proposed industrial and tourism zones will create jobs for the country. And in international headlines, terror in Indonesia. 3 families behind ISIS-inspired bombings in Indonesia's Surabaya. It's 9 o'clock on the dot. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to First at 9 on Other Derana 24/7, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Mahesh Johnny. Question: who will vie to become the next president of this country? Well, answer coming up later on in the show. But we begin with reactions to the fuel hike that continues to roll in. Minister of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Development Vijit Munisoisa revealed that cabinet approval will be sought tomorrow to grant a fuel subsidy to multi-day and one-day fishing trawlers. Once approved, the minister said the fuel subsidy could be implemented starting from the 18th of this month. Meanwhile, issuing a communique today, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources Development stated that the subsidy will be extended in the form of funds that will be directly credited to relevant bank accounts of beneficiaries.
Following the recent cabinet decision to increase the prices of fuel, fishing communities around Sri Lanka engaged in protests demanding the government to reduce prices of kerosene. From midnight Thursday, price of kerosene oil increased by 57 rupees, more than half of the existing price, to 101 rupees per litre. As part of the protest against increased kerosene prices, the fishing community in Negombo refrained from going out to sea. The Negombo fish market was also seen closed in protest.
As a result of the market being closed in protest of the kerosene price, thousands have lost their jobs.
In the meantime, fishermen from villages along the coastal belt of Sri Lanka, including Chilau, refrained from fishing. They had also hoisted black flags as show of their protest, and many fish markets were also seen closed.
If this continues, we will have to jump into the sea with our families. Government says that they did not increase the price of fishermen, but where can we purchase at normal prices? It is not just the government, but the previous government too should be held responsible since they set an example by increasing prices. If this continues, we will launch a large protest campaign.
Meanwhile, following a religious ceremony in Negombo, Archbishop of Colombo, His Eminence Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, called the government to reduce the price of kerosene, considering the inconveniences faced by the fishing communities.
Have come and met me. They want to ask whether that this kerosene price can be given some concession. Currently, as a fisherman, all over Sri Lanka, they got excited. That's right. Tomorrow, I think they are starting a protest. Yeah, so you could this to the government and ask them to consider giving a reduction.
I contacted the secretary to the Prime Minister and he told me that 5 billion rupees has also been allocated for a program to provide fuel subsidy to the fishing community. I believe that raising prices is a mistake made by the government and we should correct it as soon as possible.
Meanwhile, convening a media briefing, Minister of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources Development Vijit Munisoisa also spoke on the matter.
Earlier, subsidies were extended in a form of coupons, but now we are seeking a new system immediately. I will submit a paper to Cabinet tomorrow seeking approval for a new program of subsidizing the fishing community. That fuel subsidy will come into effect on the 18th of this month. We can provide concessions to people with economical challenges, but we won't be able to extend it to large-scale businessmen or diplomats. Meanwhile, commenting on protest against recent fuel price hike, Minister of Regional Development, Wildlife and Sustainable Development, Field Marshal Minister Sarath Fonseca clarifies that although the price hike followed skyrocketing world market prices, the current fuel price still remains below prices set by the previous government. However, leader of the Pivithuru Hela Urumiya, parliamentarian Udaya Gammanpila, says that a litre of petrol could be sold at 90 rupees if not for government taxes. Are you aware that even after fuel prices were increased, they are still around 25 to 50 rupees below prices in 2015 under the then government? So how does a crisis that didn't occur at that time occur now? If the fisheries community is ready to go to the streets in protest, we will listen to them, but we will never shoot at them, just as Anthony was shot earlier in Chilao.
Rajapaksa government increased the prices to 137 rupees on 30th September 2011 when the price of a crude oil barrel was $100. But this government sell at the same price when the price of crude oil has just increased to $67 per barrel. It is true that our government once sold petrol litre at 150 rupees. But then crude oil prices were in the range of $100 to $110. As MP Ravi Karunanayake correctly pointed out, the government had to increase the prices not because of the increase in the world market, but because of the heavy taxes imposed on fuel. If there are no taxes on fuel, a litre of petrol can be sold for just 90 rupees.
Fuel prices increased in the world market, so we had to increase prices here. Most of them don't remember the price hike of 2015. They don't remember how much a litre of diesel cost back then. People who increased prices then are shouting at us now. Reducing fuel prices, especially petrol prices, will not affect the country's economy in a major way. Fuel consumption within our country means that money flows out to overseas nations. Also staying on the story, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Professor G.L. Piris, alleges that despite government claims that the fuel price hike was due to global price increases, it is not the case. Convening a media briefing today, the parliamentarian also expressed views on the depreciation of the Sri Lankan rupee.
The government is consistently maintaining that the rise in fuel prices is entirely the result of world market price fluctuations. This is not the truth at all. When this government came into office, the price of a barrel of petrol was something like $31 per barrel. It is today about 76. During the time of the government of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, it went up to 99. In fact, on one or two occasions, it even exceeded the $100 barrier. But we managed to fight a war to provide relief to the people, welfare facilities and infrastructure development on an unprecedented scale. Today, there is total economic mismanagement. Rupee has been devalued by approximately 21% during the period of the Yahapalana administration. When President Mahinda Rajapaksa handed over the government, the value of the rupee against the dollar was 123. Yesterday, it was 159 rupees and 20 cents. So that's a devaluation of more than 21% during the Yahapalana years. Now, the government's solution to this is to print more and more money. In the months of March and April, the amount of money that was printed was unprecedented in the history of the country. The necessary consequence of that is galloping inflation. Former Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake has pointed out that this fuel increase would not have been necessary if the government cut down the tax of 45 rupees that they are imposing on a litre of oil. As the government took the decision to increase the fuel prices, simultaneously they appointed another minister to the cabinet. Yet another minister. Today, the maintenance of a minister costs 7 million rupees per month, and the entire cabinet costs the nation something like 560 million rupees. a month. There's absolutely no concern about expenditure that is incurred on the maintenance of ministers. The price increase is due to the weaknesses and the deficiencies of this government. That is the cause.
Let's shift gears now. Minister Vijit Munisoisa and Mahinda Amravira says that President Maithripala Sirisena will be the presidential candidate for the Sri Lanka Freedom Party at the 2020 presidential election. They made these remarks responding to questions raised by journalists today. The presidential candidate for the Sri Lanka Freedom Party will be President Maithripala Sirisena. When they call for nominations, we will be prepared to nominate him. As the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, we have planned to nominate President Maithripala Sirisena as the candidate. He is a leader who has won the trust of all religions and communities in Sri Lanka. He is also a leader who stands against fraud and corruption. Minister of Finance and Mass Media Mangala Samaraveera meanwhile made evident that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is the most suitable candidate for the United National Party's presidential campaign for 2020. He made this remark addressing a gathering in Mathura recently. President Maithripala Sirisena made great sacrifices when he became our common candidate. He won the election thanks to votes of UNP supporters, and he hasn't forgotten that. In future, we will strengthen the UNP, and with due respect to the President, we will bring out a new candidate from our party. We will not perform these secretly. In fact, I hope Ranil Wickremesinghe will be the next president. Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna says they are planning to nominate a candidate for the 2020 presidential election. Many parliamentarians representing the opposition said that they are rooting for a candidate who will be decided by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
The 2018 Vietmaga Convention was held yesterday under the theme An Intellectually Inspired Sri Lanka. A few parliamentarians expressed their views on candidates for the 2020 presidential election.
There is no political viewpoint on this yet, but the decision to be made by the former President Mahinda Rajapaksa will be one that considers the entire nation. The country favours former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. We are aware that he will not be able to contest the next presidential election as the 19th Amendment prevents it. But whoever nominated will be contesting on his behalf. I was only talking about how we must prepare for 2030. You should have asked that question from former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. There is no point in asking that from me.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, Parliamentarian Professor G.L. Peiris said that his party is ready to nominate a candidate for the next presidential election.
ඔබතුමා සඳහන් කර අපි පොහොට්ටුව දිනලා පෙන්නනවා වගේ. ඒ කියන්නේ 2019 ජනාධිපති වරණේ ලාංඡනය ජනාධිපති අපේක්ෂකගේ නෙළුම් මලද නැත්නම් පොහොට්ටුව? ශ්‍රී ලංකා නිදහස් පක්ෂය නෙවෙයි.
නෙළුම් පොහොට්ටුව කියන්නේ මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමා. මේ මැතිවරණයේ නායකත්වය දෙන්නේ මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මැතිතුමා.
In other local stories we have for you tonight, President Maithripala Sirisena, who engaged in a two-day state visit in Iran, is scheduled to return to the island tonight. During the president's visit, the first state visit since his appointment, both countries inked 5 new MOUs yesterday to further strengthen economic and trade ties between the two countries.
On Saturday, the Sri Lankan delegation led by President Maithripala Sirisena left for Iran on a 2-day state visit at the invitation of Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. Bilateral discussions were held between the two state leaders, President Maithripala Sirisena and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, in the capital city of Tehran yesterday. During the occasion, 5 MOUs were signed between the two countries to further strengthen economic and trade relations. Meanwhile, the president also met with the Supreme Leader of Iran, Ayatollah al-Khomeini, in Tehran yesterday. The Supreme Leader pointed out the need for both countries to take advantage of its geographically strategic location, as well as to actively implement the new MOUs. Thereafter, the president met with a group of Sri Lankans living in Tehran, where he engaged in talks on the current status of Sri Lanka.
As per research carried out by the National Institute of Oceanography and Marine Science on the intra-monsoonal season, it is predicted that the weather change is set to begin between the 20th and 25th of this month. Principal scientist of the institute, Dr. Priyantha Jinadas, added that the study of the intra-monsoonal seasonal oscillation of the Bay of Bengal aims to better predict changes in weather patterns in Sri Lanka, particularly during this period. Meanwhile, the Disaster Management Centre said that over 8,000 individuals were affected in the Galle district following bad weather over the past 48 hours due to pre-monsoonal activities.
In the Galle district, more than 30 houses in Vanamula, Ambalangoda were inundated owing to heavy rains experienced last night. Area residents charged that flooding occurred due to a blockage in the drainage system in the area over the past few days. Meanwhile, several locations in Balapitiya were inundated due to heavy rains. According to our correspondent, the Balapitiya Pradeshiya Sabha initiated measures to release the accumulated water in these areas. Several houses and roads in Bandungoda, Ambalangwatta and Galle were also inundated. In Bandaragama, however, villagers residing in Badarava in Liangahawela charge that despite informing authorities of possible landslide risks the area faces, no remedial measures were taken for the past 4 years. Last night, 6 houses were destroyed by landslide in the village, while a further 17 houses remain partially damaged. Residents claim that they have not been provided with land to relocate or with any compensation. Meanwhile, speaking to First at 9, Deputy Director of the Disaster Management Centre, Pradeep Kodipilli, said that landslide warnings have been issued to several areas.
So yesterday, more than 8,000 people been affected with the flash flood situation in Galle and Khalta district. In several locations been inundated and several byroads also been inundated. But all the water receded in the evening time. But last night there were less rain being recorded in many areas of the southern part of Sri Lanka, especially. And therefore, there is no any other situation is reported so far as badly. And all the people who are living in hilly areas, especially in mountainous areas, need to pay a lot of attention over the signs of the landslides and any signs of the landslide. So still the warning is continued from the Putlam via Colombo and Putlam to Bati via Colombo and Galle. So sea surges could be expected until 15th of this May.
Meanwhile, Principal Scientist of the National Institute of Oceanography and Marine Sciences, Dr. Priyantha Jinadas, said that as per research carried out by the Institute in relation to the intra-monsoon seasonal oscillation, the weather pattern is set to begin by the end of this month.
During this research, we are going to study the oceanic status as well as the atmospheric status. Normally, monsoon comes at the end of May every year. This year also similar this phenomena. In this year, prediction says monsoon breakdown on 20th May to 25th May. It is normally similar to the previous years. So we will not expect much changes in monsoon patterns during this year.
Well, we have an weather advice from the DMC. If you are traveling along the Kegol or Bulat-Kopitiya road, there is a temporary close of the road due to a rockfall, and motorists are advised to take an alternative route. If you know anyone traveling along the Kegol to Bulat-Kopitiya road, it has been closed temporarily due to a rockfall, and motorists are advised to take alternative routes. That's an advisory just received by us from the DMC. Let's move on to other stories we have for you tonight. Taking up their opposition on Sri Lanka's regional trade agreements, the Government Medical Officers Association today said that they had requested a discussion with President Maithripala Sirisena. Addressing a media briefing, GMOA spokesperson Dr. Samantha Ananda said they intend to take up for discussion the latest free trade agreement with Singapore and other regional pacts that impact the local services sector. GMOA claims that they will seek strike action on the 17th of this month if a discussion is not granted with the President.
The Parliament was unaware about the Singapore Free Trade Agreement. People of this country is unaware about this trade agreement. Come forward, bring your officials in front of the press and inform with facts that these are the benefits that we are going to take. We saw that minister is trying his level best to rectify with some sentences saying that there is no impact from this agreement. We invite the minister to read this document carefully. Please go through it. So having considered all these things, GMOA wrote to His Excellency the President to intervene and safeguard the country from this ECTA negotiations and the Singapore agreement, and start dialogues with the professionals and the other relevant authorities to overcome the problems that we are going to face in time to come.
A British rugby player touring in Sri Lanka with a team of 22 players has died at a private hospital in Colombo yesterday due to breathing difficulties. Police spokesperson SP Ruan Gunasekara said that another teammate, admitted also due to breathing difficulties, is currently in critical condition. A team of 22 British rugby players arrived in Sri Lanka on the 10th of this month to participate in a friendly rugby tournament. The event was held on Saturday, after which the players had returned to their hotel. According to the police, 2 of the players had developed breathing difficulties in the early hours of yesterday, following which they were admitted to a private hospital by the management of the hotel. One of the 2 players, however, died while receiving treatment at the hospital. The deceased was identified as 26-year-old Harvard Thomas Andrew from the United Kingdom. Police spokesperson stated that the other player, who is in a critical condition, is identified as a 27-year-old Brett Thomas. General Bipin Rawat, the Chief of Staff of the Indian Army, arrived in Sri Lanka yesterday for a week-long goodwill visit. He was cordially welcomed at the Bandaranaike International Airport by his Sri Lankan counterpart, Lieutenant General Mahesh Senanayake, and President of Sri Lanka Army Seva Vanitha Unit, Chandrika Senanayake. The Chief of Staff of the Indian Army is on an invitation from his Sri Lankan counterpart. Upon arrival this morning, he attended a ceremony to pay respect to fallen Indian peacekeeping force war heroes at the IPKF Momentum at Bathramulla.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
Let's move on to business news now. Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that more job opportunities will be created following the proposed industrial and tourism zones after they are introduced. He made this remark at an event held at Temple Trees this morning. Following the war, we were not able to receive investments that we hoped for. Since 2015, as the government, the first step that we took was to settle our outstanding debt. Loans were taken every year, which is why the funds we can allocate for expenses is limited. Despite this, however, foreign direct investment to the country amounted to $1,900 million last year. This is not taking into account the money received from the Hambantota Port deal. From 2017 up until 2020, it is our goal to further increase FDI and exports. We are to commence construction of 3 industrial zones in the areas of Bingiriya, Kaluthura and Valigama. Sources say that the appointment of a new chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission is expected to take place within this week. Media sources say that top professional Ranil T. Vijayasinghe is tipped to be appointed as the new SEC chairman. Vijayasinghe served as a commissioner in the previous SEC commission headed by Thilak Karunaratne. Since the term of the last chairman ended in January, no appointment has been made to head the Securities Exchange Commission. Let's get you some oil prices. Oil prices fell today away from last week's multi-year highs as a relentless rise in U.S. drilling activity pointed to increased output, while resistance emerged in Europe and Asia to U.S. sanctions against major crude exporter Iran. However, market analysts in the United Arab Emirates warned that the U.S. decision to quit the Iran nuclear deal and impose new sanctions on Iran could depress growth of the Iranian economy, cut the oil produces crude export and end up inflation global prices. Today, Brent crude futures LCOC1 were at 76.79 US dollars per barrel, down 33 cents from their last close, while US West Texas intermediate crude futures were at $70.44.
Today, Brent crude futures LCOC1 were at 76 US dollars and 79 cents per barrel, down 33 cents from their last close, while US West Texas intermediate crude futures were at 70 US dollars and 44 cents a barrel, down 26 cents. Brent and WTI last week reached their highest since November 2014 at 78 US dollars and 71 US dollars and 89 cents per barrel respectively, as market expects Iran's oil exports to fall significantly once US sanctions bite later this year.
If Iranian exports are cut significantly, then obviously prices will go up, and I think in that case the other OPEC countries, and primarily we mean Saudi Arabia, will really have to step in that case. Market-wise, they don't want prices to go too high and potentially cause a recession.
Let's take you to the stock market now. The all-share price index fell today for a sixth straight session and ended at 0.52% weaker at 6,444.96. Its lowest close since April 10th. The index lost 0.4% last week in its third straight weekly decline. Now, the Sri Lankan rupee hit a record low of 158 rupees per dollar today in thin trade after the central bank chief said the currency will depreciate gradually while exporters stayed away from the market expecting their further weakness. The rupee ended at 157 rupees to 95 to 158 rupees to 10 cents per dollar compared with Friday's close. The currency has declined 0.22% so far this month after 1.5% fall in April. It had slipped 2.9% for this year. With that, let's take a look at how the currencies traded against the Sri Lankan rupee during the day today.
Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
On to international news now. Aviation experts believe that they may have solved the mystery of the disappearance of flight MH370, saying the 239 passengers and crew were the victims of a deliberate criminal act carried out by the plane's captain. The fate of the Boeing 777 has mystified investigators ever since it went missing en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing in 2014. However, a panel of experts assembled for the Australian TV program 60 Minutes said the evidence suggests that Captain Zahir Ahmad Shah executed a careful series of maneuvers to evade detection and ensure the plane disappeared in a remote location. Martin Dolan, former head of the Australia Transport Safety Board, who led the 2-year search for the missing plane, said, quote, "This was planned, this was deliberate, and it was done over an extended period of time." Well, a day after Islamic militants killed at least 13 people in suicide attacks on churches in the Indonesian city of Surabaya, a suicide bombing targeting the police headquarters of the city was carried out today. 6 civilians and 4 police officers were injured in the attack.
The suicide bombing at the police headquarters in the Indonesian city of Surabaya today was carried out by a family of 5 riding on 2 motorbikes. Video footage of the latest attack on the police headquarters shows 2 motorbikes approaching a checkpoint just before the blast. 10 people were injured by the attack. Indonesia was on high alert after bombings were carried out yesterday by another single family targeting 3 churches in the country's second largest city, Surabaya. A mother and 2 daughters aged 9 and 12 blew themselves up at Diponegoro Indonesian Christian Church, while the father and 2 sons targeted 2 others. 13 people were killed and 40 others were injured in yesterday's attacks that were claimed by the Islamic State group. The archipelago, home to 260 million people, has seen a resurgence of Islamist militancy in recent months, and the attacks in Surabaya have raised concerns about the potency of jihadist networks.
Let's move on to sports news now. Germany's Alexander Zverev produced a stunning display to crush Dominic Thiem 6-4, 6-4 in the Madrid Open final yesterday. Second-seeded Zverev broke opponent Thiem in the opening game thanks to his double fault and was never really challenged. There was no chance of a let-up from Alexander Zverev, and he remained focused throughout, winning the first set against Dominic Thiem. Now taking complete control over the second set as well, Zverev won the set 6-4 as he became only the fifth active player to win at least 3 Master 1000 titles, joining the big four of Rafael Nadal, Roger Federer, Novak Djokovic and Andy Murray.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Other Derana 24/7.
And that is a part of your world tonight right here on Other Derana 24/7, Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Mahesh Johnny. First at 9, we'll return tomorrow at the same time. Be sure to join us then. Well, we end tonight's bulletin by taking you to Lisbon, Spain, where Israel won the Eurovision Song Contest with pop star Neta Brasilei's quirky entry toy. The Israeli performer was awarded 529 points, beating favourite Cyprus into second place. Enjoy the song and good night.
With 529 points. Neta, this is your stage. Thank you everyone here in Altice Arena also. Thank you all.
Ouch. Ouch, 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 look at me, I'm a beautiful creature. I don't care about your modern town preacher. Welcome boys, too much noise.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Other Derana 24/7.